Welcome, everyone. This is finally it. This is the CEO of ECA session. We unfortunately had a little bit of a tech glitch on Tuesday. It was obviously Amazon's fault and none of our fault whatsoever. I am going to reintroduce my panel because I don't think any one of you saw anything on Tuesday. But first off, we've got Edna from Euler Hermes. We've got Fernando from Seske. We've got Nabil from Credendo. We've got not Anne Karine, but Suzanne, who jumped in her place. And we've also got Mandisi from ECIC. And I am very, very, very proud to be part of this amazing panel. And I'm going to hand over to my co-moderator, who's going to set the scene shortly. So Yasser, over to you.
Thanks, Dominique. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, connected friends and colleagues. Really delighted and honored to co-moderate such a distinguished panel of esteemed professionals and ECA leaders. Since the glitch that was mentioned by Dominique, we got, and you got a number of sessions, mainly on technical considerations relating to the ECA medium and long-term financing, market data, renewables, sectors, energy storage, infrastructure and emerging markets, etc., etc. What we'd like to cover with you today are more high-level macro considerations for the ECAs, the cornerstone of the ECA market. Setting the scene, setting the landscape, the background. Tend to say over the past 15 to 18 months, I call this period January 20, February 20, and since then it's 1 month called COVID, and still going, but with hopes of getting closer and closer to the end of the tunnel. Qualifiers to describe this period, numerous qualifiers: tough, challenging, difficult, disruptive, unprecedented, unexpected, etc., etc. Most importantly, and this is what we are going to focus on, what is our landscape? And importantly, what shall we retain from this period, these past months? Shall we retain the satellite views of empty cities? Shall we retain the satellite views of clear, clean blue skies across the globe? The fear of the unknown? Shall we retain the disruption of our ways of doing business, home working, audio-visual communications, to the extent that today, when you have a technical glitch on a video conference and you end up being the only one on audio, you feel that it is a disaster because you are not seeing stakeholders and partners on a call? Shall we retain the disruption in supply chains, the technological disruptions? Shall we retain the formidable stimulus packages that have been put in place by the various government and multilaterals and key players of the world economy, with the prime positioning that our ECAs have taken in a number of jurisdictions and a number of countries? Shall we retain the impressive adaptations that we went through individually and collectively? Shall we retain the resilience of our export finance market, our export finance industry? The proactivity, the reactivity, the creativity? Shall we retain the continuous investments, the continuous implementations of transactions on the ground in many places, a reflection of the keen interest in making things progress, in generating growth? Shall we retain the most recent, very optimistic and very positive forecasts of growth across the globe? And last but not least, and probably this is one that you are expecting, shall we retain the formidable and the astonishing heightening of an acceleration of awareness on sustainability, on transition over the past few months and few weeks? Probably you tell me we should retain all of this. But I can carry on for a while, but this is not the topic, not you listening to me. The topic is you listening to our guests, to the leaders of the ECA market. And on this, the floor is back to Dominique for our guests and our distinguished panelists to provide us and share with us their experience and their thoughts on this new world and these new themes and concepts.
Thank you so much for setting the scene, Yasser. Obviously, a lot of very interesting topics, a lot of very I'm not going to say ethical questions, but a lot of questions. And I think only the future will tell where we're going to go and what's going to stick and what's going to disappear. And that kind of leads me to the first question, which is what pandemic related products or measures would you say worked well and which ones did work not so well? And out of the ones that work well, which are going to stick and which are going to disappear in the future? And I'm going to put this question out to Edna at Euler Hermes. Edna, if you could take this question.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's great to be here again, against all odds. Nice to see you again after 2 days. And I guess that we're here again. It shows the resilience that Yasser was just speaking about, that we've all developed during the last months or over a year. And I was quite touched by this intro because it so much highlighted the great achievement of so many great companies all around the world who actually reinvented themselves, especially in the export industry, and not only companies, but also governments and ECAs. So I think we've all really done a great job. And speaking about governments, especially in Germany, you could see the German government moving from austerity to bazooka in a couple of weeks. So I guess that's really unheard of. This bazooka, for example, being the stabilization fund of 600 billion euros in Germany. So, I mean, those are all crisis measures. Another crisis measure I'd really want to mention, even though, Dominic, I know you want to hear more about medium long term, but private credit insurers, they actually teamed up with their governments to, I would say, save supply chains during the crisis. And I think that's been a remarkable step actually to have been done. So, and of course that will end now. You were asking what will stay, what will end. That will end at the end of this month in Germany because credit insurers are back to pre-crisis levels. So that's the positive note, I think, Yasser, you were also giving in your intro. So for the ECA, Euler Hermes, what has been important for us has been, I would say, less products. It's more the core of our business, and that is to keep a good risk stance, keeping up our support, even though numbers were actually deteriorating for some buyers. And I must say that the German government has been very, very stable in this time, and that's the feedback we're getting. And I think that was actually the most important measure. Some other measures, I think the debt holidays for cruise ships and aircraft, they were really milestones in terms of cooperation between all partners. And I think from today's perspective, this was the right thing to do, actually, to support exporters and buyers in those very targeted sectors. So I think that was important. And hopefully, of course, that will end now then with the end of the crisis, hopefully this or next year. For us, ramping up the short-term business was important. We had 40% more applications, which shows that there was a real need in the market for us to step in where normally private credit insurers are active in the crisis. And just to end with 2 products, because you wanted to hear about products, we launched last year the renewable energy scheme, which has preferential conditions for renewable projects. That, of course, is something that we will keep up and even further develop. And the last thing is the shopping line we launched last year, which has targeted a lot of interest with our exporters. So that's definitely here to stay. Back to you, Dominic.
Great, thank you so much, Edna. Obviously, a lot of measures and products being introduced, unprecedented times as well. And Fernando, from a Spanish point of view, what did CESCE do to help the exporters and keep the day-to-day business running?
Thank you, Dominic. I fully agree with Edna. Our main task in this kind of scenarios is to keep operating as usual. And that's something that we are very proud of. We didn't have any interruptions in our service, and we did not have any decrease in our risk appetite, contrary to some private sector reactions. We ECAs, we are basically counter-cyclical, and we were very good at doing that job. Last year, we did 3.2 billion euros in transactions in support from CESCE, where we were able to provide support to 13 billion euros in Spanish export transactions. Going down to the specific products, we launched a line for working capital support. It was a complementary to the general line of the Spanish government handled by ECO. It was not 600 billion like in Germany, it was 100 billion. But our line was smaller, but specifically directed to exporters. We were able to provide them support to withstand the shock, to withstand the interruption in business, to overcost, the overscopes, the drop in new contracts. And once that we see the data, we see that very few Spanish exporters have not survived the crisis. Most of them, the ample majority of them, have survived the crisis because of many reasons, but also because of the support that the Spanish government has given them. It was not only the product, it was also the way to handle the product. It was fully digitalized. You could do it fully from home. It could handle way more transactions than normally we do. We tripled the number of customers last year. It was the high degree of mechanization and homework that we were able to do. Things that didn't work so well. We launched a specific line for short-term support on behalf of the state on OECD countries where we didn't see that much appetite. At least in Spain, the private market kept working so well, not very well, but apparently well, and we didn't have that much support for that. What will stay? There's definitely mechanization, digitalization, the way to operate huge quantities of policies of customers, which we were not used to do it before. What will go away, probably, most probably, this short-term support from OECD countries. Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Fernando. Much appreciated. And Yasser, do you want to introduce the next question, or do you want me to continue? I'll continue. All right, I'll continue.
Please.
Now that we've
I reserve my introduction to another question. You'll see which one.
But you've now seen which products are sticking, which products work well, which products didn't work so well. So this is the next question leads me exactly to this. Where are we today? What's happening today in terms of volumes? Are we where we were pre-crisis, or are we still in a kind of crisis mode? So I would like to extend this question to Nabil from Credendo. If you want to take this question and tell us your books right now as of today, please, that would be really very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Dominic. I hope good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are hearing me well. It's my pleasure to be back here again. So your question, are we back to the normal situation? I would say that it's going better, but we are not back to a normal business as before the crisis. By the way, otherwise we would be today in Madrid and not with a virtual conference. So it's just a nice proof. The economic situation. First, we all had to face a very deep depreciation, a deep recession, but short. Even after the second lockdown in October, part of the economy was working well. Things are improving today. Of course, it's depending from region to other region, and everything is depending from my point of view about 2 or 3 important items. First, the sanitary situation. The vaccine campaign, it's a huge condition to go back to a normal situation. And the vaccine campaign means not only quickly, but also the efficiency of the vaccine. And we will see the consequences of some variant of the virus. Second things, the supply chain. Supply chain is also very important. We are noticing some shortcoming in some sectors. And then regarding the perspective, I think until now, we haven't seen a lot of claims. Neither in the ECA, but also in the private sector, in the private credit insurer. So there is no claims. We are just like a normal situation regarding the claims, no COVID-19 claims. It's probably due to the important measure taken by the authorities at all levels, international institutions like IMF or World Bank, European Union, as the member state at Edna stated, and also the central bank. Not without forgetting the ECA, because as Edna said, we did our job. So everything in the future will depend first the sanitary situation, and secondly, the way we are going to withdraw this measure, because it will happen. And then I think that we might be confronted to some claims. Coming back to your question, Dominic, what about the business? We noticed during the start of the pandemic a sharp decline of the business, but it didn't take a long time. Looking at the ECA are covering sometimes very long and extensive projects. We have seen that major projects were put on hold. We're facing some delay, but things now are anyway getting better, but I'm more afraid regarding the pipeline of the business. The prospection, business development has been put on hold by a lot of companies. So I'm afraid that we might face first a slowdown of the activity or a further delay. And secondly, of course, we will see what will be the reaction of the market, of the business market, after the withdrawal of the important measure taken by the authorities to support the economy. So getting better, but still a lot of questions.
Great, thank you, Nabil. Much appreciated. Obviously, it's you know, everybody's adapted. I'm pretty sure that this business development opportunities, there will be lots of them. If not online, at our conference, physical in Madrid in October, you'll be able to see as many clients as possible. But from a Swedish perspective, Susanne, first of all, thank you so much for stepping in last minute. I'm very, very curious to hear what the Swedish, you know, what's happening in Sweden. Is business good? Are you you doing well at the moment, or is it still a struggle?
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me. It's so nice to see all these colleagues. And let me start by thanking all the ECA colleagues in the panel and also in the audience, hopefully, for all the support for the cooperation last year when we were trying to figure out how to handle the needs and what to do to meet the results of the pandemic. So we really, really appreciate that cooperation. Actually, 2020 was a record year for ECA, and we did not see the regular business slow down. So even if we did offer the working capital credit guarantee for large corporate as a crisis measure, even not counting that, that amounted to I think 5.5 billion euros. But even not counting that, we had a record guarantee volume last year. And the level of claims are fairly low, and definitely mostly in already known problem transactions. And actually this increase has continued the first 4 months of 2021, where we have a new record. So we'll see how many transactions that we will guarantee this year. Last year was close to 2,000. Although these 4 months, it's been mainly driven by 4 large transactions. Happy to say 2 in renewable, the largest wind power park outside the UK, solar power plant in Angola, rail project in Tanzania, and then we have the ever-existing telecoms to the US. So. We see, of course, I talk to my colleagues in the business, and they see that business is looking very, very good. And you may know that ECA is the insuring part in the Swedish export credit system. We are the risk takers, we are the ECA, and then we have a funder called SEK, Swedish Export Credit, and they do kind of barometer check of the views in the export industry. And 6 of 10 exporting companies asked believe in increased business volumes this year. So we are looking positively at the future and hope to see a lot of increase in sustainable projects. And I like to say also, we not only appreciate cooperation with other ECAs, We also appreciate very much the cooperation with the banks, which was crucial when we did the crisis measures last year. Without the banks, there would be no lending. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Very positive, and I think Nabil was out of 10, 6 positive. I think you're more closer to a 9, which is really good news. It gives me courage to soldier on as well. We're going to move to the next question, and this one is kind of a follow-up question. And it's: have you seen new customers, either exporters or borrowers, that access the product who were not on the radar pre-pandemic? And then follow-up question: are you going to target exporters and new customers that you had not on the radar before the pandemic? So it's all about new customers, new clients. And I'm going to put this question out to Edna and Mandisi. So Edna, if you could start letting us know if which new customers that Euler Hermes made during the pandemic and even now.
Yeah, definitely SMEs. And that's something we've seen in crisis in the past as well. This was, for example, for the short-term project we talked about. We have about 10% new SME customers now on board with that product. So the SME target group has become larger. Talking about what we're targeting at for the future or working on right now, of course, it's the ESG sector. We have a specific target on ESG companies in Germany, and starting more with the E, I would say, than with the SG. That will follow up, but we are targeting that. We're just running a big survey to understand their needs better and maybe adapt our products to it. The second topic to mention is services. The German government ran a digitization study, which actually came to the conclusion that although Germany is known as having a very strong industry base and having best-in-class technologies in machineries, there is a rising sector of services, which we are now working on. And well, maybe the last but not least, even though it's not really customers, but the customers of our customers, meaning investors and buyers abroad, those are becoming increasingly important for us. And as you know, we started our journey to have offices around the world a couple of years ago in Dubai. We now have 3 offices also in Nairobi and Singapore. And that's definitely a journey we will continue, because this has proven to be very important for German exporters to actually have those offices targeting their customers. That's all for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Edna. If you ever want to open up an office in London, we've got some space. So just give me a ring.
Great, thanks. Yeah, as that's not EU, that's really abroad now. So yeah.
Exactly. So we can find your rep here as well. But Mandisi, from a South African point of view, what are your views on new clients, and if you had any, which ones were they, and what industries?
Good morning to the colleagues on this panel and elsewhere. I'm happy to participate and share some experiences. Indeed, what we've seen as the impact of the pandemic is that we've seen that in certain jurisdictions, especially on the African continent, some of the private sector insurance capacity did dwindle and created a market gap, and we're called in to fill the market gap in those specific transactions. In some of those areas, it related to the capacity and ability of the governments to finance their 15% down payment. So we had to come in and assist there and work in close collaboration with the other ECAs. I can mention ECA specifically. So that was quite a fruitful partnership to be able still to assist, the infrastructure program of the various governments to proceed. So that was quite a new area for us as a business. And we think that going forward, it's an area which we can see more value add by ECIC in assisting this government in being able to raise this sort of funding. As you know, that the OECD arrangement still requires 15% down payment. And I know this point has been discussed even in the IWG discussions as to how can we assist then the governments bridge this gap in the funding availability. I think going forward, what we are doing now, we did not during the height of COVID. Although we in South Africa, we're still going through a third wave, so the COVID is still very high and the level of vaccination is still very slow. So we're still in the throes of COVID here, especially on the continent as well. So whilst we had not developed new products, but what is happening now, our mandate is being revised, working with the government, the guardian authorities to revise our mandate. And currently we've not been playing a role in the short-term trade finance space. But going forward now, our mandate will allow us to do that, to play a more active role. And obviously they will seek to collaborate with the existing short-term insurance providers and find ways to cooperate and to do risk sharing. So it's a big shift, and it's also being done in the context of the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement that has been reached, which came into effect in January of this year. So there's a big push to support more intra-Africa trade and using ECA products to enable that to happen. Thanks.
Thank you, Mandisi, much appreciated. And I'm going to follow up with the next question because we've got 90 minutes left. I think, Yasser, you've unmuted yourself. You're ready to jump in here.
Okay, I'll pre-jump for this question and the following one. I think you were expecting this, and probably you were impatient getting into these topics on sustainability, energy transition, ESG. The first question that we had, I think we listened over the past 2 days to a number of discussions on sustainable, either project-related, sector-related, sector/regional related. And we were mentioning that there are reasonable market figures in 2020, but there are still new needs, new areas of focus, and consistently the statement willingness to do more and sustainable. So the first question is a multi-tier question on energy transition. It's a question to address to Suzanne and Nabil. The risks, what risks and opportunities would you have identified for energy transition to a more sustainable energy space? And the sub chapter that we would like also to cover with you, and that I think the audience is keen on getting from you, is the technological aspects. We associate some of these developments to this technology disruption. Where does technology fit in that space? And how the risk appetite and the deal structures compare or would differ from more traditional structures. So the floor is yours. Maybe starting with Suzanne on. So it's probably long question. So yeah, I'll leave it to you to tackle it in the angle you wish.
Thank you so much. Climate. I can just say that's really top of mind, and we have to remember to keep other things in mind as well. But climate is definitely very, very important, and we are experiencing extremely serious crisis. But we see that this can also be an opportunity to speed up the transition needed for a more sustainable future. And financing climate smart technology is an important part of EPM's vision. And we know that old industries have an impressive ability to transform when needs and markets change. But we also see, and we have really targeted this group, although they are SMEs, well, not all though, because that's part of our mission, but new niche tech companies that can contribute to changing consumption patterns. And we really hope that transition can take off. And you may also know that in the international fora, there is discussion about these the support to not sustainable transactions. And but of course, when you have a transition like this, you have a technological risk, and traditionally ECAs are not very interested in taking a technology risk, technologies that lack proven record. And we see new types of actors, new patterns, and of course in this case we need a little bit more risk appetite, and we need more flexible tools. And it is important for companies to participate in, and it's important for ECAs to play a complementary role in the Paris Agreement. And I'll come back to that. During this year, we have also worked with a new guarantee. It is difficult with incentives for export credit since we're bound by the OECD rules as an OECD ECA. So what we already have a quite flexible content, origin of content rules. So we are starting with a guarantee which is a type of investment loan or working capital credit guarantee to Swedish companies in transition. It's a green guarantee. So it's they have to contribute to transition, and they have to be export related for ECA. So it's still export connection. And this will be launched very soon. We don't really have a name for it. Its working name is Green Guarantee, but it's a guarantee for green export-related investments in Sweden. So we will soon hopefully go out with information. But when you come to this transition, you meet all kinds of transactions. You meet the huge solar power plant in Angola, and wind. And I think we'll see more and more of the offshore wind. But we also see, as an example of these new small tech companies, we have a company in Sweden called Exeger, and they have a product called Powerfoil. It's a small solar cell that can be charged indoors and outdoors, and they can bend in any direction, and they can be used to look like fabric or brushed metal, and you can charge your headphones with it. And I would like to have a dress in this solar cell just to walk around charging anything. I think it's spectacular. We have supported them with the business advice and a working capital credit guarantee. They've also been successful in receiving risk capital. So I really do hope that this type of companies will grow and will make our world better, and we will try to do our part in supporting them. Thank you.
Thank you. Then maybe it's a rich program, all kinds of transactions, hopefully larger number of transactions, and so it's product development, risk appetite, etc. Maybe Nabil, your views. Thank you, Nabil. Floor is yours.
Yes, I think your question was risk and opportunities, and to be frank, I see more opportunity than risk, because energy transition is really a game changer. Everybody today is convinced that we have to do something. Not only and not anymore only the Green Party or the NGO, but or the government, the business community. Everybody has a feeling of urgency, that we have to act, that we have to prepare. Of course, this feeling of urgency is different if you are looking at advanced economy or if you are looking at emerging or developing country. Why do I see more opportunities than risk? Because first of all, energy transition means research and development, means high technology. So it means a lot of investment also in the brain. Secondly, it requires huge investment. Of course, you have big project and smaller project, but all in all, it means huge investment and for long-term project. And it's covering a lot of sectors, a lot of economical sector, a lot of business, which means that everybody will be involved. And it means, first, regarding the project themselves, it's a conjunction of joining the forces. A big project, you have not one company, but it's a lot of company working, and you have various suppliers, and you have a private and public sector working together. So it's an approach, it's a global approach. Secondly, as I mentioned, most of the ambitious projects are long-term projects requiring huge amount of investment. It means that it requests an adequate financing on the long term. And that's where, of course, the ECA have a role to play. We have to mobilize our capacity. Sometimes, and it's the case for Credendo, you need to increase your capacity to cover this kind of project. It means also, I say joining forces, not only between enterprises, but also between development bank, between states, ECA, private banking, syndicate of insurers. So it requires also for the ECA a deep knowledge of the market, and beside the high capacity, beside the huge and the long tenure, we need to have a due diligence covering all the aspects, not only the environmental and social aspect, but also the financing, the legal, the pro and cons. And it means a lot of competencies. And I think that ECA are essential in this business because it's our job. And most of the ECA are preparing themselves. If we have the time, I will tell you a few things that we are doing, but it's for sure an opportunities. And the role of ECA is to transform risk into opportunities.
Thanks, Nabil. I think we all share and like this optimistic and positive view of looking at things, opportunities mitigated by appropriate due diligence and appropriate reviews and technology developments.
Yasser, just one thing.
Yeah.
We're into the last 10 minutes. I would like to swap the next two questions around. So yeah. The last question will be the question that our panelists will have 1 minute to answer each. And I'm doing this because the pressure is on. So you don't want any of your colleagues who comes last to eat in their time. So you can prepare your 1 minute. So the next question is actually on something that I've always been interested in. It's claims, good old claims. So have you seen any increase? And I'm talking medium to long term. I'm a big fan of the medium to long term business. Over the last year, and are we going to see a lot more claims? And if we do see more claims, what kind of sectors and industries are they going to be in? Mandisi, if I can put this question to you, and bear in mind, guys, we've got about 8 minutes left. We've got one more question left. We've got 5 of you. So if you could keep these questions to 4 minutes exactly between the two of you, that'd be great. So Mandisi, over to you.
Oh, thanks for that. I think we've had some transactions in the portfolio that experienced difficulties. We've managed to do restructurings for those transactions, but there is this specific transaction which seems to be going in the wrong direction and in all likelihood may result in a claim. It's in a mining sector. Obviously, because of the lockdown, the market was heavily affected, and that's feeding back into the project, that the pricing and revenue outlook of the company is not looking great. So that's where we are. Thanks.
That was short and sweet. Thank you so much, Mandisi. Fernando, from your point of view, from a Spanish point of view, have you seen any claims, or are you expecting to see any claims going forward?
For the moment being, we have not seen an increase in claims. We have restructured some projects, but we have not seen either a high increase in restructuring. We fear that in the future, once that the subsidies and credit lines disappear, we may see an increase, but for the moment, no, we have not seen anything. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. That was actually a very, very short and very brief. Good news that we haven't seen any claims yet. Yasser, I'm going to leave you the last question, and I'm looking forward to seeing this one pan out.
Quick, short, to the point. Such an important question, an all panelists question. 1 minute elevator pitch. Strictly, how do you see ESG impacting your business? And how are you proactively preparing for this core subject? The floor is yours, maybe starting with Edna, whom we haven't listened to over the past few minutes.
Thank you. Well, ESG has bin impacting our business as long as I've been with Euler Hermes, so that's more than 20 years. But we are now, of course, focusing on climate change, and we heard a lot about that the whole world is aligning around this urgency to act. So of course we are preparing. We have installed a climate change strategy for the ECA business in Germany, which will be further developed and might take up speed after the elections coming up in autumn. But actually, I have to say, we have still at least as many questions as answers on that topic, how to run it. And I'll just leave you with 4 questions which are currently being discussed The first one is actually, how can we take a transformational approach, which is allowing our companies to adapt, but still be ambitious enough? That's the first one. Second one is, how can we take into account the status quo in buyer countries? And we're talking about developing emerging countries. So does that mean that we can be technology open and, for example, replace a coal power plant by a gas power plant? And we heard Maria Ferraro in the last 2 days talking about that. The third one is, how can we incentivize green projects? Suzanne was just mentioning it. It's not that easy. Can we talk about reducing premium? And the last question is, how can we actually create a level playing field in this area? And that's including non-OECD countries to really make an impact. So I think that are the 4 questions on the top of our list right now, which we're currently discussing. Back to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Suzanne, maybe in this order, Suzanne, then Mandisi, Fernando, and Nabil, just not to interrupt you, guys.
And I'm going to go 5, 4, so you can see a countdown, so we keep it tight. Edna was 1 minute and 25 seconds. So I want to keep it tight to 1 minute. Thank you.
Suzanne, please. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. ECA is tasked by our government to align our portfolio with the Paris Agreement. So we have taken steps already a couple of years ago. In 2020, the board clarified the approach to fossil fuels. So we already stopped last year to all support in the total value chain for coal. And we will cease also support to oil and gas, since they are still fossil fuels. And we cannot contribute to not future-proof industries. And we don't think the future lies in carbon-heavy industries. We are hoping to see banks and corporates approaching us with sustainable projects, both regular export credits, which we hope to find incentives for in the near future, but also in the domestic green guarantee projects or investments. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. If I may come in there, is that South Africa is a signatory to the Paris Club Agreement and has developed its own nationally determined contribution. But obviously, as a developing country, we work within a certain environment where, for instance, in our case, and for many countries on the continent where we are most active, where you have well endowment of coal, and the transition from coal-fired power plants to gas-powered plants would be a positive step in that transition. However, we're getting pushbacks from various NGOs where there's a push to move away even from gas and oil. So I think the big question that we will have to confront is the pace of this transition, because as a pure cover ECA, we work also with the financial institution who are the actual lenders, and they are developing their own fossil finance policies. And it's important that our policies are in step. So as a company, we are working on developing our own internal policy on the financing of fossil
Sorry,
fuels.
Mandisi, I'm going to have to jump in here. We've got 1 minute left and we want to hear some others. So let's go 30 seconds and get Fernando and Nabil's view on this as well. I'm going to say thanks to all of the panelists. Thanks to Yasser for co-moderating. Go, 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 guys. We've got a minute left. Fernando, 30-second pitch on ESG, and then Nabil straight in there with 30 seconds. Let's do this.
Okay, so ESG has always been important for us. Since 2017, we have a new policy. We contribute 0.7% of our profits to ESG projects. We have a new climate facility, a new climate policy now coming up, where we restrict financing of carbon-intensive projects. And we have new green products coming up for promoting green projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Nabil, last word, over to you.
So we selected 11 SDG because we were speaking about energy transition, energy efficiency, but I think it's also important to work on a global step. So tackling also the education, the clean water, and some other stuff. So we selected 11 SDG. We have two kinds of behavior. The first one is what I call the proactive with soft incentives. We are making marketing campaign to this kind of sector to say that ECA is there, we can help you. So it meaning conferences, seminar, cooperation with business federation, which is quite important. And then we are working as colleagues for a harder approach, looking at intensive, and I'm thinking of specific product or also increasing not only the capacity, but the percentage of guarantee that we can provide. So within the OECD framework that it was said. So soft measure, proactive, but also condition that we are working on.
You're very lucky. We had a couple of seconds left. We're still live, but I think it's time to wrap it up. Thank you so much to the CEO panels of the ECAs. Thanks so much for Yasser for co-moderating, and hope to see you all soon in person or at another virtual event. Thank you so much.
Thanks, on.
Bye.
Bye. See you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So